So I was thinking about today's episode, and I realized there's four stages of where people are. You either don't like where you are, right? Currently, you're sitting in it and you don't like it, and you're not happy. The other place is that you're heading towards a place that you don't like. You're heading towards a place that you don't want to be in, like that place where you end up where you're like, oh, I don't like where I am. You could be heading towards that place. You could be headed towards a place you do want to be. It's a great place to be. Really enjoy like the journey because you know you're heading towards something you want to have. And then the last place, you really like where you are, and there's very little to do. You're kind of just basking in and all the effort that you've put in to get there. And I thought about that, and there's so much revolves around your morning. Where is your morning headed? Because that's where your life is headed every day. So you could be waking up every morning and you're like, I really do not like where I am. I don't like the way I feel. I'm not getting out of bed in time. I'm immediately on my phone. I'm not eating the right foods. I do not like where I am. And maybe you've got some good things going on and you're decent. You're doing well. But man, now you've added in a little thing. Now you're looking at your phone a little more. And you're like, I don't like where I'm headed with this because I know where it leads. This is 4 days in a row now. I'm on my phone right out of bed and I'm distracted. I'm rushing out the door. I'm not having personal time and thoughts. So I don't like where I'm headed. And then when you turn that around, you're like, you know what? I'm putting the phone away. I'm going to start constructing my morning the way I want it to be. And so when I first wake up, I'm not looking at my phone. And so those next 4 days, you don't look and you're like, I really like where I'm going. I enjoy this. What's next? Now I have the capacity to think, okay, now no, I'm just not on my phone. Now I'm going to eat something healthy. And then you do that consistently over long periods of time. You look up and you're like, man, I really like where I'm at. So I've got my morning dialed in. And my days are now dialed in because my morning is dialed in. We want the silver bullet. We want the pill. We could just because we want it now, but it just doesn't exist. It can't happen. So what does that mean? That means you do have to put the effort in. Effort. And we don't like effort. We don't want to have to spend the energy because changing a habit is very hard. The thought of waking up tomorrow morning and you have that temptation to pull the phone to your eyes and type in whatever it is you type in, it's going to be very hard tomorrow morning to say no. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. Like that moment of don't pick up the phone, do something else, do something that's good for you. And we're going to get into how to own your morning because that will help you own your life. And you're going to be in that sweet spot of I like where I am. And you're just making whatever you can just now add whatever tweak you want in this beautiful place, full of energy, full of life, in control, certainty, and the future looks good. It's a beautiful, blissful place. And there's no better person to talk about this today than Sean. I've learned so much of my morning stuff and just as example. And so we're going to get into today so you can do it too. So take us away, Sean. Where would you start someone that is there straight up, not even headed to a place they don't want to be? They're not where they want to be right now.
Yeah, so it reminds me of our Level Up and Live community class last Friday. We're wrapping up on our beta testing for the curriculum, and I remember at the first start of the class, one of the things that one of the members had said in his morning routine that he wanted to optimize his morning routine. So I'd asked him the question, what his morning looked like and what time he got up, right? Because that's where it all starts. What time do you get up? And he had said 6:30. He gets up at 6:30 a.m. every single morning. I said, well, what do you do as soon as you wake up at 6:30 a.m. in the morning? And the first thing that I've always learned that most people say is they check their phone. They go straight to their social medias. They go straight to their notifications. They go straight to their email. And what's interesting, not throwing my wife under the bus, is that's something that my wife, being a high performer, being an achiever, being a type A, strong personality, she wants to get things done, tasks, responsibilities. So what, in myself included, and I've been down both roads. And I asked this individual in the class, I said, well, there's two versions of you. So you listening to this, there's two versions of you. There's the guy, like you said, that's waking up at 6:30, that's checking his phone, the notifications, the emails, and responding to everybody else's agenda. So automatically you're putting yourself, your best self, in their shoes, and you're responding to their agenda, whatever it may be, notifications, social media, and you're feeding yourself. You're feeding yourself either negative or positive in that world, in that environment. So instead, the other version of you listening to this, picture yourself up. You're like, you know what? I'm sick and tired of it. I'm on a rat race. What would it take you're going to wake up at 6 6:30, and this is what I told this member in the class, you're going to wake up at 6:30. Yes, correct. What would it take to put your phone on do not disturb for 30 minutes? And he looked at me and he goes,
He kind of smiled.
he
He's
kind of,
like, it's like,
you
I hadn't
remember
thought
that?
of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, immediately he felt this sense of peace, right? It's like,
Yeah.
oh, do not disturb for 30 minutes. Okay, yeah, I could try that. Well, I challenge you to do that between now and our next class. And so I can't wait to ask him about it. But that 30 minutes, that 6:30 to 7 a.m., by keeping your phone on, do not disturb, whether you got an iPhone, Android, doesn't matter. That 30 minutes, now he can go fill his cup up, Ewan. And so,
Do you remember what he said? He's to jump in real quick. He said, he was like, and we asked him why he did that. And he was like, well, what if someone needs me or an emergency? I'm like, when have you ever had an emergency in that first 30 minutes? An emergency, a true. And he's like, well, he laughed. He said, well, never. Exactly. But in our minds, we're like, oh, I got to check because what if? Which you think about that for a second, it's more than just the phone. It puts you in a cortisol state of stress. Like, well,
yes,
what if someone needs me? Now your brain's thinking response mode already. Like, what if someone's upset? What if something needs handled? What if there's an emergency? Adrenaline, cortisol goes, and we don't realize we're doing this. That has kicked your morning off into a taper down for the rest of the day. You have to fight to get back up to level.
yeah,
So I'm just throwing that out there. But he responded, there is no emergency in the morning. If there was an emergency, someone's knocking on your door.
yeah. And
Right.
for full context, this gentleman, he just started a business. He's about 6 months in, so he's concerned, right? All eyes are on him. Customers responding to them in a timely manner, and just meeting the demands and the needs. And anybody listening to this, myself included, it's like we all have these demands and these tasks and these responsibilities. But you can either show up, picture the version of you that's showing up at 100%, which is the guy that's putting on his phone on do not disturb from 6:30 to 7 a.m., or the version of you that's saying, you know what, I'm meeting the demands of this other person. I'm going to put myself in their agenda, and I'm going to be at 50% of my version of myself. We'll do the math on that. Over time, that compounds. That's how you get unfulfillment, lack of purpose, lack of meaning, lack of drive, fatigue, all these different things that we experience as human beings. And we wonder why we don't have time for ourselves, and we don't, because we're not being intentional about it. We're not, we're not making sure that we set enough time. I don't care if it's 5 minutes, whatever that time it is in the morning. It's like Ewan said in the beginning of the podcast, that's how you set your day up for momentum, success. I don't care if you can give your 5 minutes, 30 minutes. And that's where it all starts. In my opinion, it used to be 15 minutes, and now it's turned into 60 minutes and 90 minutes, because I've seen the progress. I've seen what it's done for my life. And you listening to this, I challenge you, you can be to that catalyst for transformation in your own life and then the people around you. And here's the beautiful thing, what I've learned, Ewan, when he goes and does that 30 minutes and do not disturb, who's that going to affect? That's going to affect everybody around him, his spouse, maybe kids, customers, because his customers are going to be like, well, hey, you used to respond to me at 6:30, but now you're responding to me at 7. What's going on with this, right? I don't know if a customer would say that, but if they did, he'd be like, well, I want to make sure, and here's the key ingredient. You ready? I want to make sure I'm showing up the best version of yourself. I've noticed it started depleting my energy by responding at 6:30 in the morning to meet the needs. But I wanted to make sure I showed up the best version of myself so I can serve you better, provide a better experience, provide a better, Sean for that service or product. And this is going to allow me to do that. And then that person, that customer, that friend, that family is going to be like, whoa.
Yeah. Next
That
level.
30 minutes is doing that? Yes, because I'm able to spend my time in prayer, Ewan, get my body moving for 5 or 10 minutes. Yes. Maybe it's getting super clear on what I want my day to look like, what the intentions are. So
the irony of it all is we look at the phone first 30 minutes to make sure we're doing good business because I'm after my business and I want it to grow and be good. And yet it's the irony is it's the polar opposite. If you spend the time not doing that, you're going to get what it is that you're going there for currently, which is a great business. You're going to have time to spend on it. And so look how backwards that is. And just FYI, I consider him a very high level guy. Like he's new in business, but he's very professional, great demeanor. And so he's going to do great things. Just that 30 minutes back, he's on the hunt to be excellent in his business. And I know it's going to pay dividends for him. So major respect for him, even being vulnerable enough to say it out loud to the group, to the class. And so you give him great advice, and I can't wait to see what he does. He's literally on a different path. He's heading towards where he wants to go, and that's a beautiful place.
So this is all aligned with clarity, right? Which is a huge habit for somebody that's wanting to get to where they want to go. They want to level up, live their best life. It's creating that positive habits, getting super clear. Oh, I want to put my phone on do not disturb for 30 minutes. I'm clear on that. So I can set the intentions for the day. I'm curious with you, and I've got a two-part question. What, and you're so good at this, like breaking things down, the psychological, but behind it, why do you think people struggle with the clarity in the mornings and setting that intention? Because you had asked me that question. And
Yeah.
then the alternative is like, what's one step to maybe overcoming that and putting intention and clarity for their morning routine?
Yeah, I think people do it because it's purely subconscious at this point. If you were to say, uh, why is someone doing? Why are they picking up their phone? They wouldn't be able to tell you other than that's what they just do. So it's first off being aware, like that clarity of, oh, I'm
That's
doing
good.
this for first moment. And I think you also have to get to the point where sick and tired. Like we're really honing in, really dialing in on that here recently of like, what's the moment someone makes a difference? Like in the mastermind group, where one of our members said, I changed my habits of eating this week. I went a whole week and ate great because he was sick and tired, had enough, put his foot down. And so you really have to get yourself in that state of put your foot down on whatever it is that's derailing you in your morning. Like, I want a good morning. I can do it. You have to believe, you have to have the hope and the vision of what it's going to be. And so we don't get the clarity because we're just not taught it. It's just not in our, there's no one else around in the mornings. That's our time. And if you think about it, you're actually with yourself in the morning. So you have to create some level of accountability to yourself, which sounds crazy, right? But who else are you accountable to if you're not yourself? So you have to get in that mindset of there's me who sabotages, and then there's me who could step in and change that sabotage and make it something good, right? The accountability factor. And to have that conversation, one is going to win and one's going to lose. And so you have to be able to say to yourself, what do I need to do in the mornings that I'm sick of? I'm tired of it. I don't like the results. I want it to be this way. The one that holds accountable has to win that argument and that fight and that feeling, that emotion. So I think repetitive action is how we get to clarity. And I think once you get that clarity, you almost don't need the discipline as much because you're driven towards
Mm,
that. You're not pulled. You're not dragged. You don't have to. Oh, I gotta go do this. Like if
yeah.
you're doing that, it's only a matter of time before you slip back into easy mode. And so that would be if I'm just analyzing myself, that's how I work. And I know if I speak to other people, how they process, how they work, that's what happens.
Mhm.
It's no one's there. Why not? Man, I need to work on this more and write this down and really dig into it. But if you don't have a why to do it, then why not? That's why we suffer, because there's no reason not to. There's no reason to not eat the piece of cake in the fridge.
Yeah.
It's not there's literally no reason. But for my health, that's not going to work. Like that's not a reason, because you don't care about your health currently. That's why you're eating the cake. You're going to have to get to where this is the reason I don't, and I'm putting my foot down. So I think it's the same with waking up in the morning, owning your mornings. What is the purpose? What's the reason behind it? How do you want to feel? Maybe it's that for someone. But do you remember a time when you weren't in control of your mornings? Like, what did it look like for you? Like, how did it feel? And do you remember the first one or two things that you changed? Was it Miracle Morning? I think that might have been one of the first times I read that book, and I'm like, I'm going to do those 5 things. And it started to change my mindset ever since then. Was that, how did it go for you?
Yeah, no, man, it was when I first started the insurance business back in 2015. That's when it's kind of like I resonated so much with what the individual in the Level Up community class said. It's like, oh, I wake up at 6:30 and I'm immediately meeting the demands of the universe, right? Whether it's your kids or wife or spouse or business or customers. For me, it was the customers. It was meeting the demands of the customers right away. Not only because I had to, Ewan, but because I wanted to, right? I was super excited. If you're a new business owner, you're super excited. Anytime you start something new,
Ooh,
maybe you're
you
training
want
for a
to.
marathon or high rocks. Remember the times you used to get up at 4 a.m. and you were miserable when you'd show up? I'm like, how you doing, Ewan? I'm like all jippery, and you're like, dude, I'm not feeling it, bro. Like
Slept 4 hours. I'm wrecked.
four hours of sleep, right? But because you were excited,
Yeah.
you were fired up, you were clear. High Rocks World, championships, right?
I had my reason why,
You
my
had your
purpose.
reason why. And that's what I'm getting to. And so it's like that reason why. And I realized when I started the insurance business, I was like, man, I kept doing the same thing over and over every single morning. My morning routine was the same thing as the member in the class, was meeting the demands year after year. And then I got to a point, I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm getting older and I'm doing the same thing expecting different results, meaning I'm not able to provide a better experience for the customers. So that's when I started my development journey, right? It's like, oh, okay, cool. I've done sales and marketing. I've gotten the business where it needed to go as far as revenue, hiring people and stuff like that. But I started noticing a lid. So I started making the small little tweaks, and it started with the morning. I came across how Elrod, which is the miracle morning. I don't remember where I heard it. At the time, I wasn't listening to podcasts, but I picked up the book, How Elrod, The Miracle Morning. It changed my life forever. And I've been living by it ever since for multiple years now. And which is SAVERS is the acronym of scribing, affirmations, visualization, exercising. And so you go through these, and I don't care if it's 15 minutes. And I used to start off at 15 minutes, and I would do these different small little scribing and journaling. And of course, it was trial and error. I didn't have to a certain degree, I didn't know what I was doing, but that's the point, right? Is putting in the reps and then trying something different, right? It's like I told the member in the class, hey, put it on Do Not Disturb. I bet you, if he's listening to this, and you're listening to this, and you try that one new habit like what we're talking about, it's going to be uncomfortable. But that's the whole point of growth, is getting uncomfortable
until it's comfortable.
Yes,
Because
exactly.
after a while, that's what you do. It'd be uncomfortable to not do it.
Yeah,
And that's the sweet spot. But man, once you make things that are uncomfortable, comfortable, that are good for you, man, you're on the path to being unstoppable, because now your default is good, awesome
yeah,
stuff. Your
yep,
default is awesome. Well,
yep,
where you end up with your default, because most 99% of the time, default is not going anywhere good, like because
yeah,
it's not been paid attention to, not had the clarity. And
mm,
and I know for you, man, the fact you're still doing it, that's years upon years of you doing the savers. And,
yeah,
and look at all the progress, all the success, and the self-development and the peace that you found and the freedom you found, because you've done that every morning. And people could listen and be like, well, now he was going to do it anyways, or it might not have had that much impact, and it probably won't have that much impact for me. Man, like I was saying, the silver bullets, the pills that we're looking for to get where we want to go, there isn't one. Like
yep.
the only silver bullet, the only pill you can take is to do what you just did over long periods of time.
That's it.
Like that is the silver bullet. And
Yep.
there isn't any other option. You have to put the time, energy, and effort. Whatever came fast will go away fast. What takes a long time to gain, it will take a long time to lose. And that's, and so really you could directly correlate as 0.1% or 1% or 10% of all your successes come
Yep.
from you controlling your mornings.
That's it. And it all leads to what the second habit, which is for me, it's important, is the generating the energy.
Mm.
So if we don't do these things as far as clarity and intentional about making sure that we're doing the things that's going to light us up, fulfill us in the morning, and finding that time, this all leads to in my opinion, one of the most important ingredients is energy for me. And so I know that for you, it is for you as well, Ewan, and whether it's running, like I know here recently in our season of life, we enjoy running and going out, and not because we have to, because we want to. And what it allows us, a lot of people go out and they run and they work out, and you hear these comments, I need to go clear my mind. Well, for me, that's what allows me to generate my energy and my
Yes.
ideas,
Yeah.
is going on that and getting that energy. Because when you can start that energy, I mean, you can hear it in my voice right now. Sometimes I need to slow down as a leader and a communicator,
Nope.
but
Keep it up. Crank it up, dude.
but I'm so excited.
Yeah.
I got so much energy at 8:30, and people are like, "How does this guy?" You've told me that several times, and so do the people that you work with are like, "How does this guy have so much energy?" It's because I've been able to master my morning, like what we're talking
Yeah.
about, getting super clear, very intentional, and then setting these non-negotiables out so I can generate the energy to be my best version of myself at 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I hate to overstate it, but it's just so clear that if your morning starts off good, the rest of the day is impacted. Like maybe your day gets south, like maybe bad things happen later in your day, but because you started off good, you're going to handle those things that are hard totally different than if you started the day off on the back foot, tired, energyless, directionless, and then the bad things happen. Oh man, you're heading towards a spiral to depression, because
Yes.
now you're just a victim of life. Like things are just happening to you, and then you start believing it's that you don't have any power or control or hope. and then you stop taking action. And guess what we do in those moments when we don't control ourselves, or we don't have control in our lives? What can we control? And this is one of many things, but it's the most part one of the most biggest ones. We can control our food. Oh, and so I can control what I put in my mouth. And I'm not talking in the good way. I'm dealing now with my stress and my anxieties because I can control this food with the emotions, the dopamine I get from eating the food. And that's why we overeat. Many, many times we're dealing with stress, dealing with problems, and we're eating them away. And we're like, why am I doing this? Why am I needing this hit of glucose, the sugar, because it makes me feel good? And I
Yeah.
don't feel good. Why not? Because well, this thing happened today. It was very stressful. And I play that back out. And what led up to that very stressful thing is, well, the morning started off poorly
Yes.
because I just was all over the place. And that seems very simplify what I just said there. But man, I guarantee you play back a lot of your days. That's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
Morning started off bad, roll right into something that seemed overwhelming, and then you felt down and out and hopeless, and you're like, when is life going to change? And then you get to the evening time and your decision power is gone, and you go to the pantry, you go to the fridge, and you eat that piece of cake because it just feels good. Finally, oh, I can have something good today. We don't
Mm.
know we're doing this, and then we sit, and about 15 minutes after the cake, you don't feel good, your heart's racing, the sugar's pumping, and your gut's hanging over your belt, like over your pants. I've been there. I
Yeah.
hate that feeling. I don't like it. Like when I
Yeah.
go over a speed bump in the car, my stomach jiggles. I just don't like it. Like I don't
Mhm.
like it. I
Yeah.
remember eating burgers and fries at lunchtime, and I went over a speed bump one time, and my stomach bounced. And I'm like,
Oh,
what? That's
yeah.
not my identity. I don't want to live like that. And it's nothing to do with the looks. It's like my health. I correlate that with health. And this all stems down to your mornings.
Mhm. Yeah.
You can really hack a lot of that stuff away by controlling your mornings.
So I'm curious with you, Ewan, like you putting in the work behind the scenes, being a high rocks competitor, and really fine toothing your mornings, your morning routines. And I know it sounds like you've got it dialed in. And how does that? I know we've talked about nutrition, starting your morning off. How does that channel into some of the other areas of your life? So we've talked,
Mm.
we talk a lot about fitness. We talk about like starting your morning, but how do you channel that energy from you starting your morning off working out into these other areas of life? Family, relationships, some of these things that you're doing.
Yeah, and what part of my morning routine is help them get the kids ready for school, and help them Kel get out the door or whatever she needs to do. And if I haven't like exercised or executed on what I said I would do that morning, immediately I'm not present with them. I'm
Mm.
not present because I'm like, didn't get this done today. It's going to impact that and my goals in the future. Like I'm disappointed in myself, or I know where this is going to lead if I keep this up. And so then I'm not present with the kids. I'm not present with, I might miss a thing or two. Then I'm behind on um, getting out the door myself or setting up. And so what am I thinking about? Not what I need to be doing. If I'm going to be dealing with a customer, a client, a big deal that I'm working, or a project I'm working on, and I'm coming in at it with this lack of execution, I already know how those days go, and it's not good. And the opposite of that, to your question, is, man, when I've gone out and I ran the amount I wanted to run, uh, I've got everything laid out, clothes, gotten ready, helping the kids now, getting out the door, super happy. I'm having fun with them because I got the time, I got the mental energy, I've executed, helping Kel get what she needs done, send them off. I get back into the house. I'm prepped, ready for work, and then I'm off into the day to execute. I'm just planning on executing now. There's no decisions that need to be made because I got derailed. And so I think for me, a lot of that energy comes from obviously exercise. Right, you have more energy doing that. You're eating right, but when you don't have to think about what you need to do next in the moment, you can just go ahead and do it because it's already been decided. If you have to think, that's one of the biggest things for me where I'll lose energy. Is when I have to make a decision in the morning. Like,
Mm.
what do I need to do? As soon as that happens, I just use the major amount of, because what if I need to do this? But what about that? Which one's better? Now I'm stalling, and I can already, just even pretending right now, thinking about that, it's taking energy, glucose from my brain, and it's
Yes.
depleted to me executing.
See that.
And I
Yeah.
think everybody has to have that. We all work the same way as far as our brains work. I know you've done such a phenomenal job. I've often said this: your heart rate is Olympian. I'm not kidding. Olympic level low heart rate, 38. Like I think what's his name? who was the cyclist?
Oh, Lance
Lance
Armstrong.
Armstrong. I think your heart rate's better than his was, which is just bananas, and your HRV's through the roof. I often think a lot of that is because you've automated so much of the decision making in your life that you don't spend any glucose, no stress on
Yeah.
what needs to be done because you've already done it in your mind at a previous point, and so you just get to be very chill with that. So I've always taken that into account. I'm like, okay, I need to remove things off my plate so that I can save that energy, which if I don't have the cortisol and the glucose dumping out for making decisions, then my HRV is better,
Yeah.
which means I'm going to be able to execute more. My heart
Yes.
rate's actually going to be lower. And
Yep.
so it's there's always the two roads. Which road? The one who's high heart rate, low HRV versus the other one that's the opposite. The other one's going to win,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, energy wise in the morning impacts everything for me.
Yeah. And what everything that I'm hearing you say is like showing up the best version of your wife and filling your tank up first. And then so you're able to fill their tank up is another habit that I feel like it's important. It's a necessity, right? So which
Yeah.
is an intention. You're leading with purpose in for you and Heinemeier to be his best self, to step up to the plate for his kids, for his wife, and everything else that you have going through the day. And
Yeah.
so to your comment about the leading with intentional, and so removing, some of these things that drain my stress and help me manage those things in my mind, it's like what I ask myself, and I would encourage anybody listening to this, ask yourself who needs me to be my best self today. That's what I ask myself every morning. Who needs me to be my best self today? For me in the mornings, it's my wife, right? I need to be my best version of myself. And so maybe that's making a meal for my wife, right? It's like I need to be able to show. If I don't feel good, Ewan, if I don't fill my tank up when and be intentional about it and get super clear on that, then I'm not going to want to fill her tank up,
Yeah.
right? And so
So
I need to be
true.
able to create that discipline, create that habit of necessity because it's purposeful. It's a purpose driven life because it's important to me and it's important to her. And what's also interesting is here recently you had mentioned about if what I'd heard you say was that if I have to make up the decision to, for example, every Sunday, what do a lot of Christians do? What do a lot of people do that are religious? They go to church and they either watch it online or they go to church. And so for us, we see it all the time. It's so interesting. We sit in the front row every single Sunday and we show up consistently, right? Whether we like it or not, whether we feel like it or not, we do it. The decision's already made. See, we already tell ourselves, we don't ask ourselves on a Sunday morning. We used to, hey, do you want to go to church today? Well, we'll go based off our feelings. No, let's watch it from online. Super easy to do that. But
Yeah.
what you just said and what you just confirmed is that's how I've been able to manage my life. And it's taken time is the decision's already made.
Yeah.
What I'm going to wear tomorrow, what I'm going to wear for church, what I'm going to eat, what I'm going to go to church. Yes, I'm going to go to church. The decision, whether I feel like it or not, we're going to show up. And every time we go there, there's always different people around us because the pastor even says it when he preaches. He's like, we love you guys, and he's talking to the people in the video, and he's preaching. He goes, whether you're watching this online or listening to the podcast or here in person, remember, go ahead and make the decision that you're going to come here next Sunday, so you remove that.
Yeah.
Right. And it's a necessity because it's a purpose driven life and you're intentional about living that. And I think that's the purpose is another key important habit because when you lead with that because it's who I'm wanting to become as a husband in our spiritual journey and all these different things that we've talked about in the habits that get you to where you want to go. And it's all starting that morning and that day off, in a healthy version. So yeah, man, I resonate with so much with what you're saying as far as, making the decisions in advance.
What would you say to someone? Because I think about like my biggest derailment moments is like, man, I was going to do this, but I'm not feeling it. And I realize that's just the recipe for disaster. It is like, but in that moment, let's say it's a stressful moment, and this for anybody, like, so let's say it's someone, they've never thought about this before, and they've kind of been wishy-washy, like, well, I was going to do this, but I didn't feel it. It was cold outside, and so I'm not. How do you, someone on the basement floor, what would be the first tip you would give someone or help or coach them to, and baby them, right? Because they're not used to this. Like, how would you help them that first step of doing what it is they said they would do, even though they might not want to? Because the only reason we don't do the things we said we would do is like, well, I'm just not currently feeling it, right? It's basically that. There's nothing else around it. Maybe some anxiety or fear or tiredness or whatever. But how do you execute in those moments?
Yeah. So for me, it's very important to figure out like what it is. So like for if somebody's listening to this, they want to, prime example. So we have a friend, and we won't mention names because just for confidentiality, they like one of the spouses, they want to go to church and the other one doesn't.
Mm,
And so I resonate with that because I used to be that guy that didn't want to go to church, right?
mm,
Kendra would always go to church. And one of the things that we've learned over time is like, hey, if you don't want to go to church, I'm going to go to church, and then I'll be the role model. I'll be the leader,
yeah,
right? And so
yeah,
luckily fortunately, we've put in the work and put in the reps. So we both go together. But for somebody that's like, you know what? Okay, for that example, I want to go to church. Well, that's what it is, right? Here's the goal. I want to go to church once a week. Super simple, right? Once a week. And so if you're not even, let's say you're not even watching church, or you're not even going to church. Okay. So maybe you start there. It's like, I don't want, to see somebody. Remove the barriers. So, okay,
mm,
I'll watch it from church.
mm,
Stack it, right?
yeah,
Positive habit stacking. It's like, oh, I haven't watched church in, I don't know, years, but I'm going to watch church on this. Okay. So now you do that, and maybe you take something away from it. And so what is that doing? Well, the other person, the other spouse maybe is not watching, or doing something else, but they know that you're watching the church. So not only are you influencing, that's another good habit,
yeah,
you're influencing because of what you decided to do. So what I'm going to church, I'm going to watch church. And the second one is, here it is, Ewan. Why? Why do you want to go to church?
yeah,
Right? So that person that's watching church online, they've removed the barriers. This other person, is over here going, okay, cool. Yeah, we'll see how long this lasts, right? But when you have that why, Ewan, then this other person over here is going to be like, you know what? The next Sunday rolls around, oh, they're going to church again. Here's why they're going to church again, Ewan, because of the why, because the
mm,
emotional compelling nature. This person, this individual is like, you know what? It's been a cog in the wheel. We've been doing the same thing. I'm not growing spiritually, emotionally, physically, and I want to plug myself in and learn, scripture. I want to learn devotion. I want to learn something outside of what I already know
yeah.
spiritually. And you do that by plugging yourself in, reading the Bible, and doing these different things. And so you keep it stupid simple, and then you tie your why behind it. And so for me, it was like I wanted to be a servant leader, Ewan. I wanted to be a servant leader. Okay. Well, I didn't have a role model or somebody to mimic over the years to be what does a servant leader look like? So I needed to plug myself into a church. And even though it's uncomfortable for me, I tied that why behind it. And then once I had the what, go to church on a weekly basis, read a devotion, read a couple pages in the Bible, go to married life. And all these things started compounding over time because I had the why behind why I wanted to do these things, be a servant leader, be a better husband for my wife. And the only reason I'm able to be a better person, the best version for my wife, is because I've plugged myself into these environments. Listen, you are the product of the environment you're in. Plain and simple. See, before that, I was mowing my yard, I was cleaning my car, I was doing my oil changes. I was not clear, I was not intentional. And guess what we call that? It's the freaking rat race. It's the cog in the wheel. You're doing the same thing over and over, and you're expecting to grow and level up and live your best life. Ain't gonna happen.
Nope.
The what and the why to doing these things.
You know, I mentioned earlier, and it's something I said I need to spend more time on it. But if you don't have the why, it's a why not. Just don't do it. Right? Like where I've gotten this the most recently. Well, my exercise is no longer exercise. I train. And I was thinking
Mm,
about that. I don't exercise anymore. I've always just exercised because I want to be in good shape, look good, feel
yes.
good. Maybe get a good time if I'm up against somebody, having fun sometime at a CrossFit deal. But then when High Rocks kicked in, I'm like, no, I got to train. Because I've got a destination that I'm training for, like a purpose, and I want to hit this time. So I'm not exercising anymore. I'm in training mode, and it made me realize it stopped my poor eating habits
Mm,
immediately because I'm like, well, because now I'm training, eating this cake or candy, planned eating, compulsive eating, impulsive eating. It's that's going to impact my training, which isn't going to impact my destination of executing this time. And so maybe it's not a sport for somebody or competition, but what can you say that, well, this is why, and also not just ask why, but then explore, well, why wouldn't I just go ahead and do it? Well, Well, I would go ahead and just do it because there's nothing behind it. There is no why. Like there's no real, I think that helps you discover your why even more.
Yes.
Your real why, because let's say you have a why and you go ahead and eat it anyway. Well, your why could not have been important enough.
Yeah.
Can't, like it can't, you have to explore more really deep. Maybe you don't have one. Maybe you have to go get one and figure
Yes.
one out that you could actually chase down. I don't think we've talked about that. I haven't really thought about it because there's many times I'm like, I don't have a why.
No.
Well, I went and got one by signing up for High Rocks accidentally. I didn't realize like this is going to impact performance. And I suddenly created a why out of nowhere, thin air. So
Yeah.
maybe you could create a why for yourself to follow through on. And maybe that's something, it's because accountability is what that is to
Yeah.
yourself.
And for the listener listening to this, one of the things that I encourage and I challenge you to do this, and it's super simple. And I used to struggle with this, but it's really helped me out. And I want to equip you with this. And so hopefully, if you're on a treadmill, in a car, or maybe you're on wherever you're at, right? If you can make a note of this, I always like to make it in my phone. But SMART goals. This time of year, making a SMART goal. And so in the different areas of life, and I didn't understand that when I used to hear that. I'm like, ugh, how many different areas of life are there? Well, there's typically four, right? Relationship, business, fitness and health, and then spirituality. And so just keep it super simple. So spend every Sunday looking at those four areas of life. And so what that's going to do is not only allow you to be clear, allow you to be intentional, allow you to focus in on who you're trying to become and and conserve your energy for fulfillment, but it's going to allow you to, like what we're talking about, what's the what, which is the goal, what's the goal in that area of life. And so for what I'm hearing you say is like fitness and health. Okay, let's break it down, right? So High Rocks, you had a time, you had High Rocks, so that was that's in fitness and health. Okay, what is it? It's this time in High Rocks. So you break that down, you work backwards.
Mm,
Why? Well, it's because who I want to become. I want to eliminate sugar. I want to eat cleaner, the 80-20 rule. Why? Because that's who I need to become. That's the person, like you always tell me, that's the person that's going to get to through that finish line at that time. Right. And so that's the version of you that needs to do these different things on a daily basis. So you tie that emotional compelling nature. Why? By being super specific. So guys, 4 areas every Sunday, just one goal in each area of life, and put that what. So SMART goals, just in case you didn't know, it's specific. What's that specific goal? And then so you spell it out, and then it has to be measurable, right, Ewan? Because if you're not measuring, for me, it's like I need to measure my resting heart rate, my HRV. I need to measure my sleep. I need to measure these things because if my resting heart rate's through the roof, well, something's jacked up, and I'm maybe stressed out. I need to manage that. And then the second one is SMA. So it's going to be attainable. Ewan, okay, do you want to put up a sub 60 at High Rocks? You're like, well, that's not attainable
yeah.
in 3 months. So
Not yet.
it has to be attainable. And
Yeah.
then the third one is it relevant, Ewan? Is it
Mm,
relevant to your life right now in your season of life? Can you go actually put the training in for that health and fitness goal of High Rocks to get to where you want to go? Is
yeah.
that attainable? Yes. Okay, great. Then you've answered that question. And the next one is time bound. What's the time bound? Meaning, what's the deadline? Well, March 2025, High Rocks. If you're following our journey, we've signed up for Houston. So you've got 3.5 months to do these things. That is a SMART goal, my friend. So if you're listening to this, SMART goal for each area of life. And let me tell you something. That's how you get to where you want to go. That's how you get to these morning routines to show up the best version of yourself and equip yourself, your mindset, and these different tools along the way you revisit on a weekly basis to make sure you're on the right path to get to where you want to go.
Someone could be listening to this right now and be like, that sounds like a lot. Like, I can't do that. But they're still hunting for the silver bullet. They're still hunting for the pill.
Yep.
And hopefully they're getting and I'm saying hopefully I am continually on this path also, like we all are.
We all are.
Of what next can we refine, right? Because there's always the next level up and live, right? We're always hunting the next level. I'm like, that's a lot if you've never done that before. But if you so you might say, well, I'm just not going to do it. I can't do that. It's not me. What's the alternative? You have to. There's why, and well, why not just do something that? Well, what's the alternative? Because if there isn't a pill or a bullet, then you have to put in this daily activity, and don't think about it as all 3 months, all in one go, all the effort that you'd have to put in 3 months.
Right.
Just put in the effort, what would need to happen in the next 30 minutes. Like, just
Yes.
think that close. Like, once you get the SMART goals out there, well, then it's all manageable, right? It's attainable. I think that's one of the
Yes.
things I like the most out of the SMART. It was like, what is attainable out of that? Is it possible for me? Because if I don't think it's possible, I'm not innately going to do anything about it. I'm like, well, that's
Exactly.
a lost cause. But if
Yep.
it's like, I could actually do that, the miracle morning, it doesn't have to be an hour long. If you can't do a 30-minute workout and 15 minutes of reading or writing or meditation, man, 15 minutes, 5 things in a 15 minutes, 3 minutes a piece. Man, I encourage people to do 5 push-ups. Do one. Do a kneeling push-up. Just do a single one and start the habit, start the identity of, hey, I'm someone that does a push-up in the morning.
Mm.
I'm an exerciser. I do that. And
Yeah.
I read one sentence. I'm a reader. I meditated for 60 seconds. I'm a meditator, right? You can do it all in 5 minutes if you wanted to, just a taste, and then work out from there. Don't think about the 50 minutes or the 3 months or the big audacious goals. Just prove to yourself the identity that you are capable of doing any of these things. Like we often say, it's not me. I'm not a runner. I can't do that. I'm not a meditator. I don't have good self-control. I can't stop myself from eating. Those are all stories and fallacies and things that we've told ourselves that we believe to be true. And so it protects us from having to put the effort out there and fail. But once you start realizing, well, there is no failure and I can actually do these things, small incremental things, you have to tell your brain that you have the identity of being able to pull this off. Start with 5 minutes. That's probably one of the biggest pieces of advice I would give is to myself is just don't eat 2 bars of chocolate. Eat one. You had control to not
Yes.
eat 2.
Yep.
That's identity.
Yep. Yeah, man. Beautifully said. Wrapping things up. So, leaving you with this, what is one habit that you can commit to today? Like Ewan said, what is that one small habit and commit to it? That's the key ingredient. It's a value. Commit to it. Take action, right? Because without action, it's procrastination and you won't do it over and over and over again. And if you're experiencing adversity, if you're experiencing setbacks, challenges, man, let us know. We want to hear from you. DM us, send us a message. Share it share it on one of the channels, and we'd be happy to address that moving forward. We try to help wherever we can in our Level Up and Live community and just getting the word out there on the podcast. So we really greatly appreciate you listening to the podcast and the episode today. Make sure you share this with somebody that wants to level up and live their best life. Just a recap on things, get super clear. Start the morning off strong by setting a morning routine, being super intentional about what it is that you're doing with clarity. And then so you can set your day up for success. Also meaning with energy, because it's all about that energy, so you can continue to be productive and live a life of purpose by necessity because it's important to you. And then the byproduct of all that is influence and courage and getting to where you want to go by being 1% better every single day. So outside of that, level up and live, baby.
Level up and live.